Welcome to Recogs, the inventory success podcast, where we discuss how the top operators source, manufacture, finance, and sell their inventory in order to create successful businesses. I'm your host, Mike Gelb. I'm the community manager here at Manufactured. Manufactured is the inventory success platform for consumer and B2B companies. When we say inventory success, we mean that we help SMBs manufacture, finance, and distribute their products across 20 different categories. If you're looking to help reduce your COGS, or you're looking for inventory financing, or selling in new channels, we're happy to see if we can help at manufactured.com. Now, I know this is a free podcast, but that doesn't mean we don't have a favor. If you're enjoying the show, if you can please subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening so you don't miss when the next episode is, that would be amazing. And if you can also leave us a review on the Apple Podcasts app, that would mean a lot. We also not only produce content devoted towards SMBs, but we also throw events around the country to help foster the community in the US. So if you want to subscribe to be in the know when the next event is happening, check out manufactured.com/events and click subscribe. Our guest today is Yasameen Sajady, who is a co-founder of Maazah. Maazah produces flavorful Middle Eastern sauces, dips, chutneys. I personally love their cilantro chutney. I think it's out of this world amazing. We discuss what inspired her and her sister, Sheila, founding the company, developing the recipe, going from farmers markets to Kroger, now into Costco and Target, and their approach to expanding to more retail chains and also expanding their product lines. Without further ado, here's Yasameen. Yasameen, thank you so much for joining me here today. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks again for taking the time. I know we had this on the books a number of times, and I appreciate you squeezing me into your very busy schedule because I know that your big things are happening with Maazah. You're getting into a lot more retail chains. There's a lot of product innovation that's also happening. Really exciting. I'm really excited to get into it and talk about it. But first, take me to the beginning. You and your sister, Sheila, why did you both decide to start Maazah? What was the aha moment? What was missing, do you think, from the market?
Yeah, our aha moment was actually around the dinner table. So our magic cilantro chutney is actually our mom's recipe. So we're first generation Afghan Americans, and just how we connected with our culture is through food. Maazah means flavor in Farsi, but it also means to satisfy your soul, and that's what our mom's cooking does for us. We thought this was just like the perfect representation of like what we wanted to do with a food brand and a company. So yeah, I'm one of 55 cousins. I have a really big family. We get together almost every weekend and we're always eating, right? Like the conversation is whose house, where are we going, what park, are we barbecuing, are we like which auntie is gonna make the rice, how fresh is the naan gonna be, like what's on the menu. So early on, food was just a really big part of how we showed love and how we got together. And I think my sister and I always wanted to do something in food. We weren't sure what, like, should it be a catering company, a food truck, this, that, And one day we had our mom's green chutney at the table and we're like, oh my God, this is it. Like, we have to bottle this and share it with the world. So we started by making 25 tiny jars at a time in her kitchen and started selling at farmers markets in Minneapolis.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I will say, so how we met as well is I was in New York at Fancy Food. I believe this was the first time we met. I was at Fancy Food over the summer. You spotted me and was like, hey, like we're doing like a happy hour that night. I tried your sauces. That was one of the best happy hours I've been to, honestly.
Thank you.
For like an event function, for a work function. I loved it. The green cilantro, where you're talking about, I kept coming back for more and more. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but that's my favorite flavor so far. But I kept coming back for more and more and more of it at the event, and just And there was like kebabs there, and I remember like fried chicken and all this great stuff. And I put that on everything. It was so delicious. I absolutely loved it. And it was obviously we had a great conversation there. So really appreciate you. My belly really appreciates
Thank
its
you.
invitation
Yeah.
to the happy hour as I do. So then you started putting it in little bottles and selling at farmers market. Was there a point when you started selling at farmers market that it was selling out, or you felt like it was catching on, that okay, this is maybe could be something that's real, versus maybe just a fun kind of thing to do?
Yeah, totally. It was the farmers market was definitely our first lesson in customer validation, right? I think Midwest, Minnesota, people think ketchup is spicy. So we thought like, okay, if people are drawn to this, they're drawn to the flavors, they're definitely drawn to the story and the branding. If we can make it here, like we can like make it anywhere, kind of like we can get into retail. So I was in my MBA and using Maazah as the case study throughout the program, and my sister was a Target exec. She's there for 17 years, and I think there was definitely that moment of like, we want to quit our day jobs and do this, but what is the right timing for the brand and how do we enter into retail? We did our first Expo West in 2023. We were in an included access brand, so we were one of 10 brands that got a free booth, free passes, and a free hotel room to showcase our products. And that was kind of our golden ticket, our like entry into the industry. And we made the most of it. We applied for the next submission. We got on all the like trend finder lists of like what's happening at Expo West in 2020. Like our whole mission was, how do we get people to talk about us before we get there? Some of it worked, some of it did not work, but we also got a spot in the Expo West Pitch Slam in 2023, and we were one of 10 brands that got to get up and pitch before the show started, and we won the Pitch Slam, so that definitely brought a lot of attention to the brand at the time.
So at what point, can you talk a little about what point you all are making these making the chutneys yourself? What point did you have to, when you were thinking about scale or thinking about going beyond the farmers market, talk us a little bit about how that manufacturing process maybe changed slightly, and if you had to adjust the recipe or the ingredients in order to actually now, okay, we now have to really start thinking about our margins and thinking about this as a business. Did that at all have any disruption in terms of the?
It all grew definitely it changed organically over time, right? Like I think in the beginning it was like mom never measured anything, so nailing the recipe took almost 2 years, 3 years, truly, because she really doesn't measure anything. So it was that was a challenge, but then it was also identifying the right ingredients and sort of getting the right ingredients early on, like what makes good cilantro and what makes bad cilantro, and how like what makes good garlic and bad garlic, like really understanding that. And some of that, I think, we obviously cooking in the kitchen with my mom over the years, like we have some of that, but there's definitely like, some secrets that we had to like dig for with mom, of how her different techniques, or like we are learning those things, right, just being around her. But yeah, I think we moved into a commercial kitchen when we started getting on the shelf at like local co-ops here in the Twin Cities. So the Wedge and Seward Co-op were our first retailers. So we were in co-ops and kind of grew those doors first, and then we early on won the Kroger Fresh and Local program. That was in 2022, like right before as we were getting introduced to the industry and kind of like who the players were. Kroger was not on our list of places that we should be, but we applied for this thing on Range Me they were looking for fresh local products across America. And it was an initiative that came out of their fresh department, and Dan De La Rosa was kind of like leading this big charge of finding local products to the regions. And we submitted an application and went through like 5 or 6 interviews and won for the Midwest division. Yeah, and we had never set foot in a Kroger before. We don't have Kroger in Minnesota. So that at that point, we had already been talking to co-packers, and we had already like known that this was a change that needed to happen in our business. But that kind of sealed the deal of like, okay, you're getting into business with some major retailers. You need to find a co-pack. You need to get yourself out of the kitchen, 1, and 2, just kind of like build the business for the opportunities ahead. So if we thought if we're catching that type of attention, it's time, to push the business further.
Totally. And like I would say, like, I mean, I can only imagine when, and even when you were saying about, your 55 cousins and all getting together and doing the cookie, which auntie is doing the cooking or cooking which part of the dish that day. I was even thinking too, was it like actual recipes, or probably a lot of it was kind of family recipes that everyone, not really much ingredient measuring or anything like that. It was everyone just knew exactly what it was because it would pass down through generations and generations. And that transformation of transforming it from that, just knowing how to do it, knowing what felt right in your fingers, to actually measuring it out into telling a co-packer, all right, this is how much age agreement that you need. And of course, getting your mom's approval, right? Because of course it's her recipe. Was that tough? Like actually doing that measuring, figuring out, okay, we're going to standardize this of course throughout our entire process, because of course we want consistency, and find what that consistency and balance was. Was that difficult to actually do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you scale, you have to find a way to standardize, right? We got linked up with this volunteer program. So we actually had a group of General Mills volunteers help us with our QA documents early on. And that was really amazing. At the time I was like, okay, we have an hour Zoom today to talk about salt. Really? An hour on salt? But it's totally, now I'm like, of course, we need an hour to talk about salt, people. But you have no idea, at that, of like, what at that level, like how detailed you need to be, and the parameters of each ingredient, and what you say yes to, what you say no to. So yeah, early on, that free help definitely helped set us up for what to expect. It's a little different now. Now we work with contracted food scientists and people to help us commercialize. But I think that definitely helped kind of prepare us for those early relationships moving to a co-packer, because they speak a very different language than me, right? I'm not from CPG, so it's just a little different.
Yeah, I guess switching gears on the retail side, what was your biggest learning? I know that you started with Kroger, now you're also in Costco and other retailers as well, other accounts. What was your biggest learning when it came to merchandising, and also figuring out which accounts or you actually wanted to head into when it came to your own retail expansion strategy?
Yeah, I think for us it's a learning process, right? in the last 2 years being in retail, we have really strengthened our branding, our marketing. Our product set is a refrigerated line of chutneys, right? That shelf space is there's a lot of it, but it's very competitive. There's a growing trend for global flavors, not just in the global aisle, right? Like consumers and retailers want to see representation on all the shelves. So I think we have some things working in our favor as far as like what buyers or leadership in different retailers are looking for. For Maazah, we've also like catching the attention early on have had to like grow up pretty quickly and think about what is working and what isn't working and how do we continue the relationship and how do we work together to develop new lines or develop like see where there are greater opportunities that we can fill in gaps. We are launching a line of lentil dips, and that's because of a big gap that we saw in the category. So this is our solve for all the crappy hummus. Remember when hummus was good, Mike? 10 years ago?
Yeah.
15 years ago?
Yeah, no. I mean, there's nothing quite like going to a restaurant and just getting fresh hummus from from a restaurant. No matter, it's just such a great, obviously, experience and like warm pita, and it's just so good, so good.
Yeah, and I think just this set, like, there's a hummus case in almost every retailer now. Like, that you can expect that, and the shopper is already buying it, habitually every 2 to 3 weeks. And I think for this category, you have players like Sabra, which is not great anymore, but if it's all that's there, you'll buy it, and maybe a couple regional players. But there's like the retailers are asking themselves, like, do we really need to have 4 brands that all have a traditional style hummus, a red pepper hummus, and 2 other ones like garlic and something else? And I think they're looking for an anchor, and they're looking for some authenticity. They're looking for someone to truly like guide what should be in this set. I think we're seeing things like chocolate dessert hummus and like odd innovations like that don't really, I don't know if that needs to exist. It does right now, but I don't know if it needs to. So our lentil dip line is a nice twist on our mom's dal recipe. So instead of chickpeas, we use lentils as the base, and they're higher in fiber, higher in protein. They're better for your gut. They're better for the planet. We're using all of the fresh flavors from what our chutney line brings. So we have a basil jalapeno that's really herby but has a little bit kick to it, a turmeric ginger that's really delicious. That's one of my favorites. A roasted red pepper that's a little chili, a little smoky with a little bit of chili in it. And then a really zesty lemon lentil dip, and that one is kind of like our vanilla for someone, like you always have your chocolate and vanilla. That's our vanilla.
And I remember I tried those as well. Those were on display too at your happy hour at Fancy Food. I remember that. Those were also absolutely delicious. They were so good. Really love them. Is it when I think hummus, I kind of automatically think chickpeas. Is it? Do you think in terms of like introducing lentils, kind of a lentil base to consumers? Do you think that is going to be challenging in terms of actually delivering that, or not so much?
I don't think so. I think lentils are really having a moment right now, and I think people are looking for ways to eat lentils without having to cook them. Like I think people are looking to increase protein in their diet. I think the feedback that we've gotten just from the research that we did with our group of consumers and just buyers and bringing the dips to the different shows and the happy hour is like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of this? Or this is such a great idea. So yeah, I think it's all in line with the trends that we're seeing.
Cool. And I guess what's the approach when it comes to on the retail expansion side? Are you thinking, all right, let's focus maybe predominantly on introducing our lentil dips to our current retailers, or pushing and saying let's actually try to get more so the chutney footprint into new retailers?
Yeah, it's the dips in our current. We have a really interesting opportunity ahead of us right now because we we're testing in conventional right now with Kroger. We're in about 150 Target doors with the sauces, and our goal is to test the lentil dips there next. We're just did a Costco rotation earlier this year on the sauces, and they're really interested in testing the dips in 2025. And for natural, we just went from one unified DC to I think 9 now with our Whole Foods launch. So we have a pretty incredible opportunity to gain additional doors where we hadn't before. But it's definitely a balance of how much cash do you have to support each retailer, and the investment journey and the story, which retailer is going to, how do you prove out a conventional retailer like Kroger with a premium product, or how do you prove out a conventional like Target with a premium? So we're definitely making that decision based on a number of factors.
Got it. But my final question to you, Yasameen, is what do you value more? $100 of COGS, $100 of the inventory of inventory value of or $100 of inventory at the COGS value, or $100 cash?
This is a great question. It's CPG, right? Like the cash
CPG,
conversion.
your Maazah. Sorry, $100 inventory of Maazah.
Oh yes, no, I mean, just for the industry, the cash cycle is it's not immediate, but I would take $100 immediate. Our cash cycle is good, but it's not instant. I think we have a lot of really exciting opportunities ahead, and the cash would be great to spend on marketing and getting the product into more mouths. So yeah, cash.
Well, Yasameen, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. This has been so much fun covering Maazah and learning more about your story.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And there you have it. Thank you, Yasameen, so much for coming on the podcast. Really enjoyed our chat. Again, I highly recommend Maazah. Trying out their sauces and dips. I absolutely love them. Really enjoyed being at our happy hour over the summer. So check out Maazah. Thanks again for listening for the show. I hope it's been helpful.